let's start with the first game. That is the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Kansas City Chiefs on Saturday afternoon. Chiefs favored by 8.5. The total way up at 53. So the market is expecting some offense in this game. Sean, what do you like for your prop?
So I actually like Travis Kelce over 7.5 receiving yards here. And this kind of reminds me of the Christian McCaffrey rushing prop that, again, we both liked last week to go over. Usually I'm not on these kind of players. Like usually the market's pretty inflated. We know these guys are good, but so does, the sports book. So they tend to set the prop a bit too high, but this is a spot for Kelce where I don't know if they can set this line high enough. And it'll probably only go up. So the sooner you bet this, the better. But since week 9, Kelsey's average an 82% routes run rate. And, considering it's the playoffs, he could go up closer to 90%. I mean, it's a must-win game. So he's going to play the most he could possibly play. And he's facing a Jaguars defense that we typically take advantage of when it comes to tight ends. They rank dead last, 32nd in DVOA against tight ends. They just allowed a 6-catch, 109-yard game to Gerald Everett, who's no slouch, but it just goes to show that usually tight ends go off against this defense. And usually teams go out of their way trying to slow down Mahomes and Kelce, and they can't do it. So if there's any team that really can't do that, it's the Jaguars. So again, this is a prop. I have the median closer to 87.5, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes way over that. So this is just one of those bets where I just don't know how he's going to stay under this. And it seems like a square side to be on, but in reality, this is just a bet with just so much upside. I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, we need our producers to go find. I feel like it was like the last two postseasons. You bet like Travis Kelce unders like three
Oh,
or
the
four
worst.
times. So I feel like you're just trying to make up for that and redeem yourself.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I can't knock it. It's I'm actually a little closer to the market, to be honest. I'm at like 83 average. So I'm right there in line. But I mean, there's more upside than downside. It is Travis Kelce. And the Jaguars are dead last in DVOA against tight ends. And 30th in DVOA on passes to the middle. And I believe they're dead last on passes to the short middle. So
Yep.
a very inviting matchup. And that's going to kind of lead into my prop because I'm actually going with Juju over 54.5 receiving yards. There's a lot more value when I initially gave this out on the Tampa with Stuckey at 50.5, but I still like Juju to go over here because if you look at the 7 games in which let me say it again. If you look at the 14 games in which he started and finished, excluding the one he left with a concussion and the one where he came back and he was eased in, he played 38% of the snaps, both of those times. But his other 14 games, he went over this in 7 and he went under in 7. So it's dead even. But if it was a Juju game, in which I'll tell you why I think it's going to be in a second, but it was 74 or more yards when he went over in 7 of the games, and then 46 or less in the other 7. So if you like it and you agree with me, you're probably going to be straight, even though it's starting to rise. But the reason I like Juju here, Jacksonville plays the 6th most zone. Juju averaging just over 2.2 yards per route run against zone. That is 12th of 93 qualified wide receivers, according to PFF. And I already mentioned Jacksonville weak over the middle, especially the short middle. If they do want to switch it up and go with some more man coverage, Juju's going to line up in the slot a ton. And Trey Herndon, their slot corner, 100th of 120 qualifiers in his PFF grade. So not a very good slot corner there for the Jags. And Juju he racked up 33 yards in the first meeting, and he only played 38% of the snaps. So, he was averaging more than a yard per total snap played, run or pass. So, that bodes well for a game like this. I think he's going to be heavily targeted. And I think you could also see his route participation rate go up a little bit as well for the season. His average is 77%, jumps to about 82% if you take out those 2 games that I mentioned where he only played 38% of the snaps, but he's gotten as high as is 94%. And he's been in the high 80s a bunch. I wouldn't be surprised in a playoff game with a good matchup and no McCole Hardman if you see him, toward the higher end of his range of outcomes just in terms of his usage rate in this game. So a lot of reasons to like Juju, but I don't know. I feel like we're on the two top receivers on the Chiefs, so hopefully
I think these
over
can,
here.
These can both go over. I mean, the Jags are a pass funnel defense.
Yeah.
We kind of saw that last week. That's kind of why the Chargers lost. They were up by 24 or whatever, and they couldn't run the ball. So they kept going second and long, third and long, and have to throw. So this is one of those games. I just think Mahomes can easily go over 350 yards, and both of these guys going over.
Yeah, I have Mahomes around 305 right now, and that's still with me projecting, about a 25% chance of rain. So, like that's pretty rare. You project over 300 yards when you're adjusting for rain. So yeah, if we get good weather news, I would like these even more. But like Juju and you like Kelce. I got one more from this game before we move on. And shout out to Stuckey, who actually alerted me to this one. And I looked it up. I was like, oh man, I'm mad I didn't take this for myself on the pod, but I'll take it here. And it's Travis Etienne over 17.5 receiving yards. And, the reason that I like this is obviously number one, Jaguars, big underdogs. So you expect a trailing game script here. You expect more passes. I have Lawrence projected for 39 attempts here, 39.5 attempts. But last week, Etienne played on 85% of the running back pass snaps. So he was on the field pretty much almost the entire game, even in a game in which they had a ton of play volume. He didn't really catch a breather, and they didn't really look to JaMychal Hasty as much as they had in the regular season. So I have bumped Etienne up a little bit in terms of his route participation and, still being conservative, not giving him, the full whatever, 77% that he got last game, but just, kind of in the mid 60s. And I have him catching about 3.5 balls, just under 3.5 balls for just over 25 yards here. So I think this prop is way too low. I think there's a ton of value here because even though Etienne hasn't been a great pass catcher, this is a pretty condensed offense. They're really not using the fourth receiver. They're not using the backup tight ends. And now they're not even using the backup running back. So if you're going to be on the field, running 2/3 to 3/4 of the routes in a game where we expect a lot of passes, you would expect an explosive guy like Etienne to clear this and the Chiefs. Good matchup, 26 in DVOA on passes to running backs.
Yeah, no, I like that one. And JaMychal Hasty had 0 touches. So it's pretty clear that Etienne's going to be a true workhorse back in the playoffs. And, he's been kind of underwhelming when it comes to, receptions and receiving yards this year. But that was kind of his specialty heading into the season. Remember, they had him lining up as a receiver at times. So he's a really good pass catching back. So at any given moment, he's going to go off. And if he's seeing this much playing time, it just gives him even more chances. So yeah, good buy low opportunity because, like you said, he only had 1 catch for 12 yards last week, but that was kind of fluky based on his playing time. So he has massive, massive upside in the spot right here.
Yeah, exactly. That's really what we're taking advantage of here. It's the fact that, he didn't really put up a massive game. Like I still have his targets per route projected around, about 13.5%. So pretty low. So it's literally, it just comes down to the volume. This number is way too low. Just how we kind of talked about kind of the opposite last week with, I think it was Mixon's numbers were just way too high. There was no, it was just volume. He wasn't going to get enough. And here, I think Etienne's going to get more than enough.